What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Primetime Sports Podcast, hosted by Joey Maylard. So yesterday was the start of the ALCS. I didn't get to record before it, unfortunately, but my prediction would have been the same whether I recorded before it or after it. Everybody knows I do like the Texas Rangers a lot. I am going to the World Series, I believe, at the midway point of the season, and I stayed with that throughout the entire year after the All-Star break and on. So I'm going to stay with what I was thinking before then. I have the Rangers making it to the World Series. I'm going to give predictions though for the NLCS and the ALCS. And before I do that, though, I'm going to recap what happened in the American League Divisional Round Series and the same in the National League as well. So I'll recap the Divisional Series matchups and talk about what happened in each one of them. So let's start off with the Texas Rangers and the Baltimore Orioles. The Rangers swept Baltimore 3-0 in this 5-game series. Credit to Nate Eovaldi for showing up in a big way for the Rangers after really struggling over the last month of the regular season. He showed up in the postseason with determination and looked like the pitcher he was in the first half of the season before getting hurt. He was hurt for a month of the season, I believe in August. He came back in September and he really struggled for the most part. Wasn't great. But when the playoffs rolled around, he turned it up, and he's been one of the best postseason pitchers in baseball over the last decade, which I have a stat about that I'll give later on in the episode. But credit to Eovaldi, struggling over the last month of the regular season after coming back with an injury, and then pitched against Tampa Bay in the wild card round, and then against Baltimore in the divisional rounds, and he was great. He won Game 3 for the Rangers against the Orioles, giving up just 1 run, 5 hits, and had 7 strikeouts and 7 innings pitched. So far in the 2023 playoffs, he has 2 earned runs allowed and 13.2 innings pitched with a 1.32 ERA and a 2-0 record. Very impressive. In his career, he has a 2.7 postseason ERA with 56 strikeouts and 56 and 2/3 innings pitched, allowing just 3 home runs in those 56 and 2/3 innings pitched. So that's very impressive. Credit to Eovaldi for showing up always when it matters most. And then another guy for the Rangers that's really showed up is Jordan Montgomery, which he was great against Tampa Bay in the wild card round. And then in the divisional round, he got hit around by Baltimore, giving up 4 earned runs and 9 hits and 4 innings pitched. But then yesterday in Game 1 of the ALCS, he was unreal. He was huge for the Rangers in that game, which I'll recap that when I get to the ALCS preview. The Orioles were cold to the plate in this series. They had 243 as a team, and they were outscored by Texas 21-11. Gunnar Henderson, though, was stellar for the Orioles at the plate. 6 for 12 with a .500 batting average, a home run, 2 runs batted in, and a .1288 OPS. Adley Rutschman, though, was very cold to the plate, just 1 for 12 with a .321 OPS. And then Cedric Mullins was 0 for 12 in the series. As for the Rangers, though, their bats were hot in this series. They had .283 as a team and had an .878 team OPS against Baltimore in the series. Adolis Garcia hit .357 with the home run and 4 runs batted in the divisional round. And then Corey Seager stayed hot in this series, a .333 batting average with a .1567 OPS, a home run, 9 walks to no strikeouts. He had 0 strikeouts in the series with 9 walks. Very impressive. Marcus Semien did struggle, was 3 for 14 in the series with a .214 batting average and a .552 OPS. I still have all the confidence in the world in Marcus Semien, though, one of the best hitters in the game of baseball. And then Josh Young, the rookie, was hot in this series, 5 at 12 with a .417 batting average and a .1212 OPS. Baltimore still a young team. They still have so much to look forward to in their future, so they have nothing really to keep their heads down about the season. This was a building year for them, and they were the number 1 seed in the American League. The future for the Baltimore Orioles is the brightest in the game of baseball, and with all the young talent they have coming up to the major leagues in the next year, that they can hopefully pair with some big free agent pickups, especially at pitching, they're going to be right back here next year. They'll be right back in this position next year and be even more dangerous. The American League East, though, did come up short in the postseason. In 2023, in the regular season, they had the best record ever for a 5-team division in MLB history. 449 and 361, 449 wins and 361 losses for the American League East in the 2023 regular season, a .554 win percentage. Then in the postseason, they had the most losses without a win by a single division in a single postseason in MLB history, 0 for 7, 0 wins, 7 losses, and credit to Optus Stats for that stat there. One other funny stat that I saw was that the AL East in October, between the regular season and postseason, this was the standings for the AL East teams in October, between the regular season and postseason. The Red Sox were 1-0, number 1 in the division, technically, which is a funny stat. Obviously, Red Sox didn't make the playoffs. I know that. Just saw this and thought it was funny. The Rays were 1-2 in October. The Yankees were 0-1. The Blue Jays were 0-3. And the Orioles were 0-4. So the Red Sox end up with the best win percentage in October among the American League East teams, which obviously I know it was a joke. The Red Sox didn't make the playoffs, but I saw that as a funny stat. Now I'm going to move on to talk about the Astros and Twins series really quick. The Astros won that series in 4 games over Minnesota. The Twins did even things up in Game 2. They had a big win But then Houston won 2 straight games after that, so it was a 1-1 series after game 2, and then Houston won 2 straight games after that to end the series. Houston's pitching silenced the Twins' bats, which I mentioned in my preview of the series. I said that Minnesota really needs to win close games, like 3-2 or 4-3 to beat Houston in the series, and it's really hard to do that 3 times in a 5-game series. The Twins just really couldn't hit. They were 198 for a team batting average in the series. Carlos Correa did have a great series at the plate, though, 6 for 15 with the 400 batting average and a 1038 OPS. They did have Byron Buxton back for 1 game, but he's been battling injuries all season, and he hasn't been the consistent hitter at the plate that he was for them when he was healthy in years past. Just really couldn't get things going at the plate, and obviously the power wasn't really the same, especially considering all the injuries he's had. Houston needs Framber Valdez to be better, though. In Game 2 of this series versus Minnesota, he had 5 earned runs allowed, 7 hits, 5 strikeouts, and 3 walks in 4 1/3 innings pitched, and that was all in Game 2. He needs to be better for them today against the Texas Rangers. The Rangers are up 1-0 in the series. Houston needs him to be better today. Now I'm going to move on and talk about the NLDS. We'll start off with the Diamondbacks and the Dodgers. Tough series for my Dodgers. They got swept in this series by Arizona 3-0. The Diamondbacks found a way to beat the Dodgers in 3 games, cooling the Dodgers offense off. Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman did not have a good series. Neither one of them really showed up for the Dodgers. And the Diamondbacks pitching was great. They allowed just 17 hits in 3 games to the Dodgers' great lineup. And if you look at that rotation for Arizona, very top-heavy. Merrill Kelly's great. Zach Gallen's great. Kelly in the series was 1-0 with 3 hits and no runs allowed in 6 1/3 innings pitched with 5 strikeouts and 2 walks. And then Zach Gallen was great as well. 5 1/3 innings he went. 5 hits allowed, 2 runs, 4 strikeouts, 2 walks. Both of those guys are 2 of the best pitchers in the game of baseball, and obviously a great tandem to have at the top of your rotation. Arizona was cold in the second half of the season. They weren't great after the All-Star break. They were 32-39 after the All-Star break, but they really heated up in the playoffs, and that's when it really matters most. Most teams find a way to turn things around before the postseason starts, and then you really get a groove, so you're hot going into the postseason. That wasn't the case for Arizona. They were cold in the second half of the season, 32-39, like I mentioned, but they really put things together in the postseason. They beat Milwaukee in the first round in the Wild Card series, which I didn't really expect that, and then they went on and then swept the Dodgers in 3 games. They outscored the Dodgers 17-8 in those 3 games, including an 11-2 win in Game 1. Which was obviously a tough start to the series for the Dodgers. Clayton Kershaw got shelled in Game 1. 6 earned runs, 6 hits, 1 walk, and just got 1 out in that outing. Just got 1 out in Game 1. Only went a third of an inning. And his playoff struggles have continued, unfortunately. He had a great line, though, after the game, which I really liked. And he said this: "I'd rather fail on the biggest stage than not be here," which I really like. Obviously, at the end of the day, he hasn't had much success in the playoffs, but still one of the best pitchers of our generation and does have a World Series ring to show for it, fortunately, winning in 2020. The Arizona Diamondbacks bats were really hot in this series. They had 4 home runs in the 3rd inning of Game 3, which is actually the most in a single inning for a playoff team in MLB history. That's the most for a single team in a single inning in a playoff game in MLB history. 4 home runs in the 3rd inning of Game 3. Corbin Carroll was unreal in this series. A home run, 2 runs batted in, a 300 batting average, and an 1100 OPS. Lourdes Gurriel Jr. was very good as well. A 308 batting average with a 923 OPS, a home run, and 3 runs batted in. Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman didn't show up for the Dodgers, unfortunately. They'll likely finish 2nd and 3rd in the National League MVP vote, but neither one of these guys were great in the postseason. Betts was awful in this series. He was 0 for 11 with a run scored, 2 strikeouts, a walk, an 083 OPS, a .083 OPS, and 0 runs batted in. I still love Mookie. I'd rather have him on my team than not. A lot of people are talking about his playoff struggles over the last couple of years and saying he's not the same hitter in the postseason as he is in the regular season, which obviously the stats would show that, but I would always rather have Mookie Betts on my team than not. You don't make the playoffs, and you're not the number 2 overall seed in the NL if you don't have Mookie Betts. And then Freddie Freeman really struggled as well. He's not in the clear just because Mookie Betts struggled. He struggled as well. He's facing some heat by all the Dodgers fans and a lot of people around the MLB community. Freddie Freeman was 1 for 10 in the series with his only hit coming on an infield single. He had a run scored, 2 walks, 2 strikeouts, a 350 OPS, and no runs batted in. No runs batted in for Mookie Betts or Freddie Freeman. 2 of the best hitters in the game of baseball, probably the best 1-2 punch in the game, and they didn't show up in this series. They didn't show up for the Dodgers. But credit to Arizona. They won 16 less games than the Dodgers in the regular season, and they found a way to come out and beat the Dodgers in 3 games, which I was shocked about. I thought Arizona would steal a game because of how good Zach Gallen and Merrill Kelly are. I thought they'd take a game in the series. I believe I had the Dodgers winning in 4. But after Game 2, I said, all right, the Dodgers are done. You needed to win game 2 if you were the Dodgers. You needed to win game 2 because you weren't going to win 3 straight games against this team, considering how poor Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman looked in game 1 and also game 2. And then also how the Dodgers don't have the pitching they had in years past. And obviously injuries have played a role in that. But this upset by Arizona was the 6th biggest playoff upset in MLB history. And that's in relation to teams' win-loss records in the regular season. The Diamondbacks had 16 less wins in the regular season than the Dodgers, which makes this the 6th biggest playoff upset in MLB history. And the Dodgers have been in that category of the biggest upsets in the MLB postseason in 3 straight years. Last year in the postseason in 2022 in the NLDS, they lost to San Diego, a San Diego Padres team that had 22 less regular season wins than the Dodgers. And then in 2021, the Dodgers lost to the Braves in the NLCS, and the Braves had 18 less regular season wins that season. And then obviously this year, Arizona in the NLDS beat the Dodgers and had 16 less regular season wins than the Dodgers did this season. The Dodgers need to be better in the postseason. Flat out, they need to show up, and they need to be better in the postseason. It's as simple as that. Yes, they had injuries to a lot of key pitchers, Julio Urias, Tony Gonsolin, Walker Buehler, Dustin May, but not showing up in the playoffs, especially at the plate, is very disappointing. Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman, they need to be better. I'm the biggest Mookie Betts fan, and I've supported him through every single bump he's had in the postseason in years past, but he needs to be better. The Dodgers needed more out of him. They needed more out of him. And I really liked what I heard from Freddie Freeman and Mookie Betts after the series was over. Very stand-up guys, very professional in their post-game interviews after the series was over. But flat out, they need to be better in the postseason. The Dodgers have won 100-plus games in 3 of the last 4 full 162-game seasons, and they have no World Series to show for it in the last 4 full seasons, which obviously they won in 2020. That was a shortened season. But from 2019, and then 2021, 2022, and 2023, those 4 full 162-game seasons, the Dodgers won 100-plus games in 3 of those 4 years, and they have no World Series to show for it in those 4 years. They need to be better in the postseason, flat out. The other NLDS series was Philadelphia and Atlanta, and the Phillies had an upset win in this series. I thought Atlanta would win this series. I believe I said in 5 games, and the Phillies won in 4. So credit to the Phillies. They showed up. They proved me wrong. In Game 2, Bryce Harper was doubled up to end the game, which ended up being a Braves win, but this was the turning point of the series. You would think after the Braves win Game 2, and even the series up 1-1 after the Phillies won Game 1, the Braves won Game 2, they even up the series. You'd think that would be a turning point for Atlanta, but it wasn't. That was a turning point for the Phillies. And it's not what happened during the game. It's what happened after the game. The Braves went into the locker room after the game was over, after Bryce Harper was doubled up to end Game 2, and Orlando Arcia was in the locker room, and he taunted Bryce Harper and said, "Attaboy Harper," making fun of him. And that poked the bear. That woke the dragon up and made Bryce Harper mad. And Harper responded in Game 3 with 2 home runs, and after one of them, he stared down Arcia as he rounded second base. That was a turning point of the series. Orlando Arcia going into the locker room and saying, "Attaboy Harper," that was a turning point of the series. It lit a fire under that Phillies team, and it made Bryce Harper get mad, and obviously brought a lot of motivation, a lot of bulletin board material for that Phillies team. They really turned things around after that. And they won in Game 3, 2 home runs on Bryce Harper in that game. And Harper in the series, he was great. 6 of 13, 5 runs scored, 3 home runs, 5 runs batted in, and a 1765 OPS. As for the Braves, their bats went completely cold in this series, just like the Dodgers against the Arizona Diamondbacks. The Braves' bats went cold against the Phillies. The number 1 and number 2 seeds in the National League, Atlanta and the Dodgers, neither one of them showed up in the divisional round. Then if you look at it in the American League, the number 1 seed was the Baltimore Orioles, and they lost before the ALCS as well. So the number 1 and number 2 seeds in the National League both lost before the NLCS. And then the same goes for the number 1 seed, Baltimore Orioles in the AL. They lost before the ALCS. So that's obviously tough, considering these teams had a break before the postseason began, and there's a lot of people complaining, saying having a first-round bye in the wild card round may make these teams go cold to the plate, considering they might get rusty in that 4-day window they have off. But at the end of the day, there's no excuses. That wasn't the case for Houston. They found a way to get through the divisional round and beat Minnesota. But the other 3 teams, Atlanta, and then the Los Angeles Dodgers and the Baltimore Orioles, they all were cold in the postseason at the plate. So maybe you can get rusty by having those extra days off. But I look at it the other way. I think those extra days off can be good for your team, considering you're already in the next round. You make the division round no matter what with that first round bye. and you also can get healthier and rest your pitches. That should be a bonus and a boost at the end of the day. And just like Mookie Betts, Ronald Acuna Jr. didn't show up in this series. He's likely the National League MVP in the regular season, but he didn't show up. He was 2 for 14 in the series with a 143 batting average, a double, a 508 OPS, and no runs batted in. Matt Olson, probably going to finish 4th in the National League MVP vote. He was 4 for 16 at the plate in the series with a 250 batting average, no runs batted in, and a 544 OPS. Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman, Ronald Acuna Jr., and Matt Olson all combined for 0 runs batted in the postseason. 0 runs batted in, and that's who's going to be your National League MVP in Ronald Acuna Jr., the runner-up in Mookie Betts, and the 3rd and 4th place finishes, likely, in Freddie Freeman and Matt Olson. As for the Phillies, though, their top hitters really showed up. Trey Turner was great in the series. I already mentioned Bryce Harper, and the Trey Turner was great. He was 8 for 17 in the series with a 471 batting average, a 1441 OPS, 2 home runs, and 2 runs batted in. I know he was really struggling in the midway point of the season. A lot of people were saying he's not the hitter he once was, and he got the big payday, and they didn't want to show up this season. But I stayed with him through every step of the way. When you have a hitter like Trey Turner in your lineup, at the end of the day, you know he's going to figure things out. He's too good of a hitter to stay slumping for a whole season. And that's obviously what happened. He got comfortable midway through the season, turned things around. The Phillies fans supported him through every step of the way. And look at him right now. He had 471 in the last series versus the Atlanta Braves. And then Nick Castellanos. He was hot in this series as well. A 467 batting average. He was 7 for 15 at the plate with 4 home runs, 4 runs batted in, and a 1796 OPS in the NLDS. 1796 OPS with 4 home runs in the NLDS. Very impressive, obviously. The Phillies have the big bats to go and win the World Series. And the Phillies starting pitching was elite as well. Ranger Suarez in 2 starts in the series. He was 1-0 with a 1.04 ERA, 1 earned run, 6 strikeouts, a walk, in 8 2/3 innings pitched. Very impressive. And then Zach Wheeler was good as well. 1-0 record, a 2.84 ERA in 1 start, with 2 earned runs, 3 hits allowed, 10 strikeouts, and 1 walk in 6 1/3 innings pitched. And then Aaron Nola was great as well. 1-0, a 3.18 ERA, 2 earned runs, 6 hits allowed, 9 strikeouts to 1 walk in 5 2/3 innings pitched. Their pitching showed up, and obviously their bats did as well. And one crazy stat that I saw for this postseason is that 3 teams had 100-plus wins in the regular season, and they were combined 1-9 in the postseason. Between the Atlanta Braves, Los Angeles Dodgers, and the Baltimore Orioles, they were 1-9 in the postseason, those 3 100-plus win teams. And then another crazy stat I saw, Ronald Acuna Jr., Mookie Betts, and Freddie Freeman were combined 3 for 35 in the postseason, with a .086 batting average in the NLDS. They were 3 for 35 in the NLDS combined between those 3 studs who are going to be top 3 in the NL MVP vote. They all need to be better. It's as simple as that. So now I'm going to give a quick preview of the ALCS. The Rangers beat the Astros last night in Game 1. The starter for the Rangers was Jordan Montgomery. He was 1-0 with a 3.27 ERA, 2 starts in the postseason heading into last night. And then Justin Verlander was starting for the Astros. He was 1-0 in this postseason with a 1.17 whip in no earned runs in 6 innings pitched heading into last night. The Rangers won the game 2-0. Jonah Heim had a big RBI single in the 2nd inning. And then Leody Taveras had a big home run in the 5th inning to give the Rangers a 2-0 lead. And that was the score for the rest of the game. Jordan Montgomery was brilliant on the mound for the Rangers. He went 6.1 innings, giving up just 5 hits with 6 strikeouts, a walk, and no runs allowed. He's been great, and obviously their starting pitching has showed up in the playoffs. And then they also had a rookie they called up in September, in Evan Carter, who made a big play in last night's game in the 8th inning. He was in center field when Alex Bregman was at the plate, hit a towering shot to deep center field. It was going to be a tough play, and Evan Carter goes up, catches it not only against the wall, and then doubles up Jose Altuve at second base, which was a huge turning point in that game considering Alex Bregman, Jose Altuve, 2 of the best hitters in the Astros lineup. Altuve's at second base, Bregman was at the plate. If he hits a home run, it's a 2-2 game. If that goes off the wall and it's a double, it's a 2-1 game with Bregman at second base. And instead of that, Evan Carter, the rookie, makes a big play in center field, not only catches the ball, but then throws out Jose Altuve at second base. And he was also 1 for 4 in that game with a double. So Carter really showed up yesterday for the Rangers. In the regular season, in 23 games, he had 5 home runs with a 307 batting average, a 1059 OPS, and a 182 OPS plus. In the postseason, he's hitting 389 with a 1338 OPS. The Rangers are now 6-0 to begin the postseason winning 5 games on the road, which is very impressive. Today they're on the road yet again for Game 2. It'll be Nate Eovaldi on the mound. He is 2-0 in the postseason with a 1.32 ERA and a .8 whip so far. And then Framber Valdez is on the mound for Houston. He is 0-1 in the postseason with a 10.38 ERA and a 2.31 whip so far. I think the Rangers win this game 6-3. Nate Eovaldi has been one of the best postseason pitchers in the game of baseball over the last decade. He has a 2.7 career ERA in the postseason with a 6-3 record, and that 2.7 ERA is the 4th best in the last decade among starting pitchers in the postseason. I think he shows up today in a major way for the Texas Rangers team. They need him to step up. If they can find a way to steal another game on the road and be up 2-0 heading into Game 3, that would be huge. And I believe in this team. I've had them going to the World Series since the All-Star break just about. I'm still believing in them now. I think they win this series in 6 games. Nate Eovaldi has struggled versus Houston on the season. He has a 4.32 ERA in 8 1/3 innings pitched versus Houston. And then for Valdez, who's on the mound for Houston, he has struggled versus Texas as well. He actually has the same ERA versus Texas that Eovaldi has versus Houston this season. He has a 4.32 ERA versus Texas so far and a 1.56 whip in games against the Rangers. He's allowed 12 runs with 8 of them being earned on 18 hits versus the Rangers on the season. Houston has struggled at home for some reason. In the regular season, they were 39-42, which was obviously crazy considering how good they used to be at home at Minute Maid Park. But then on the road, they were 51-30. So for some reason, they've been better on the road than they've been at home. They're usually great at Minute Maid Park, especially in years past. But 39-42 at home this season. And today's their biggest home game of the year. They need to find a way to win today to try to even up the series 1-1 going back to Texas. At the end of the day, though, I think Texas is the better team. I think they win today. I like Texas in their lineup more. I'm a big fan of Nate Eovaldi. I do think Texas's bullpen does have to step up this series. They need to be really good considering how good the Houston Astros lineup can be, especially late in games. They've been clutch in years past. This is their 7th trip to the ALCS. Houston has made the ALCS 7 straight years. So they're a tough team to beat. They're a tough team to bet against. They won the World Series last year. But I like the Rangers. The Rangers have John Gray coming back in this series and also Max Scherzer, which 2 huge additions to their pitching staff. They need their bullpen to step up this series. And Aroldis Chapman's going to be a guy they're going to rely on heavily. In the ALDS, he had 4 walks and 1.2 innings pitched. He needs to find a way to have control. He obviously has a lot of postseason experience. Max Scherzer will be on the mound for the Rangers in Game 3, which was just announced not too long ago, which is obviously great to see considering he's one of the best pitchers in the game of baseball, has a lot of postseason experience, and the Rangers need him to be locked in Game 3. My prediction for the series is this. I think the Rangers win today. I think they have a 2-0 lead. I think they win this game 6-3. I think the Rangers win this series in 6 games, and I'm going to go with my MVP of the series being Corey Seager. I'd love to see this Rangers team make it back to the World Series. They've never won a World Series, but they did make the World Series in 2010 and 2011, losing both of those years, unfortunately. I think this could be the year to win the World Series. I had them from the midway point going to the World Series, and now with the Dodgers being out, I'm going to be rooting for them. I like them to win this series in 6 games. Now for the NLCS, going to give a quick preview of that. Game 1 is tonight. Zach Gallen is on the mound for Arizona. He is 2-0 in the postseason with a 3.18 ERA and a 1.32 whip. On the mound for the Phillies, it will be Zach Wheeler, who is 1-0 in 2 starts with a 2.08 ERA and a .69 whip so far this postseason. I think Arizona is very capable of stealing a game in Philadelphia, either in Game 1 or Game 2. I like them to keep this series close. I'm rooting for Arizona. I'm rooting for them to win this series in 7 games. Considering this is their first time back to the NLCS in 16 seasons. They've had a lot of losing seasons in between those years. So I'll be rooting for Arizona. But it's tough to bet against this Phillies team. They're 10-1 in their last 11 games at home, and they're 6-1 in the month of October. So it's really tough to bet against them right now considering how good that lineup is. I'm rooting for Arizona to win in 7 games. But like I mentioned, the Phillies are just a tough team to bet against right now. Arizona, though, their offense has found a way to put things together in the postseason. They've scored 4 more runs in all 5 postseason games this year. So that's obviously impressive. They found a way to shut down the Dodgers. That was a series I didn't really give them much of a chance, and they impressed me, obviously, in that series. And then, obviously, the Phillies as well. I mean, they exceeded my expectations beating the Braves. Other than the Braves would win that series. And the Phillies went out there and they found a way to win. So credit to them. In the regular season, when these 2 teams matched up, the Diamondbacks won 3 games and the Philadelphia Phillies won 4 games. The Phillies had a +10 run differential in those 7 games. So here's my prediction. What I want to happen, I want Arizona to win this series in 7 games. If Arizona wants to win this series, they need to win either Game 1 or Game 2. That would be huge momentum for them to be split 1-1 heading back to Arizona. That would be huge for this Diamondbacks team. I know everybody's taking the Phillies, but there's something about that Diamondbacks team, their ability to quiet the Dodgers' bats in that series. It makes me root for them. If Arizona wants to win, though, they need to find a way to keep games low, keep it low scoring. They need their pitching to step up like they have so far in the postseason. And they need an answer for Bryce Harper and the Phillies' big bats like Kyle Schwarber, Trey Turner, and Nick Castellanos. They need answers for those guys. No one's given Arizona a chance in this series. And that's typically the team I root for, the team that's an underdog that nobody's giving a chance to. And that's why I like Arizona. That's why I'm rooting for them right there, because nobody's giving them a chance in this series. And obviously they have a very good pitching staff. That's obviously something that's helped them so far in the postseason. And then they have a lot of talent at the plate as well. They have two guys in Evan Longoria and Tommy Pham who've been great as leaders in the locker room. Two veterans in the MLB that have seen a lot, obviously have been around a lot of good teams and bad teams. They know what to do and say to get a team motivated, which is obviously huge for that locker room. I think if Arizona wants to win this series, it's going to have to be a long series in 7. They need to find a way to slow down Bryce Harper and the Phillies' big bats. It needs to be low-scoring games if they want to win this series. And I think if they do win this series in 7, Ketel Marte will be the MVP. That's what I'm rooting for. I'm rooting for Arizona to win in 7, and I'm rooting for Ketel Marte to be the MVP. But for what I think is going to happen in this series, I do think Arizona's going to give a fight. I think they're going to steal a couple games. I think they steal either game 1 or game 2. But I think the Phillies are the better team. So my prediction is the Phillies win this series in 6 games. But don't count out the fight of the Diamondbacks, though. This is their first trip to the NLCS in 16 years. And as I mentioned, they have a lot of young bats that have been stepping up. Obviously, Corbin Carroll has been one of the best hitters in the game of baseball this season. And obviously a great piece for them to build around for the future. But I think Philadelphia has the better lineup. And even though I do like a lot of those guys in the Arizona lineup, Lourdes Gurriel Jr. has been very good in the postseason. Tommy Pham's hitting .318 this year in the postseason. I think the Phillies have the better team overall. I think they have a better roster that's more built right now to win this season. They're in more win-now mode than Arizona is. And obviously Arizona didn't really have these expectations coming into the season to make the World Series. That's what every team wants to do, but I don't think anybody really saw Arizona making it to the World Series before the season began. If you look at the Phillies, though, their roster is constructed to win right now. Kyle Schwarber, Nick Castellanos, Bryce Harper, Trey Turner, Aaron Nola, Zach Wheeler. That team is more built right now to win. And I think they have the better team and obviously more experienced overall. But Arizona does play with a chip on their shoulder. It wouldn't surprise me if they find a way to make this series go 7 games. That's what I'm rooting for. Arizona, I just want them to have a chance at the end of the day. They fight. They play with a chip on their shoulder. I doubted both of these teams so far in the playoffs. They've both exceeded my expectations in my playoff prediction already. I think I had the Miami Marlins giving the Phillies a series in the wild card round. I was rooting for Miami to win that series, I believe, in 3 games. And then I also was rooting for the Milwaukee Brewers over the Diamondbacks in the wild card round. But Milwaukee really struggled, and obviously the Marlins didn't do great against the Phillies either. These two teams, the Philadelphia Phillies and the Arizona Diamondbacks, have found a way to win games. This is going to be a great postseason series. I'm rooting for Arizona to win in 7, but I think the Phillies win this series in 6 games. But don't count out the fight of the Arizona Diamondbacks. They played with a chip on their shoulder all postseason, and they found a way to battle. They need to find a way to keep these games low scoring, and I think they'll have a chance. They need to steal either game 1 or game 2, and they need to continue to put some runs on the board each and every game. They found a way to score. All 5 of their postseason games have scored 4 or more runs. They need to do that in this series. And as I mentioned, I like Ketel Marte. If the Arizona Diamondbacks were to win this series, I think Ketel Marte would be a big reason for that. I know a lot of people probably pick Corbin Carroll to be the MVP of this team. But Ketel Marte is very underrated. He had .357 in the last series versus the Dodgers. And he's a very good hitter at the plate. Very patient, and he finds a way to get on base. I like him a lot. I'm rooting for the Arizona Diamondbacks to win this series, like I said, in 7. If they want to win this series, they probably have to go the distance, go all 7. And they probably need to win a good amount of those starts that Zach Gallen and Merrill Kelly are a part of. They need to win those games that their 2 aces are on the mound. I'm rooting for Arizona. They're a chippy team. Don't count them out. I wouldn't be surprised if the series goes 7 games. I wouldn't be surprised. Arizona has that in them. They have found a way to beat the Dodgers 3 out of 3 games. I was very impressed. I watched each and every one of those games. They found a way to silence the Dodgers bats, especially Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman. We'll see what they can do in this series. I do think the Phillies have a better roster right now to win. They're in more win-now mode than the Arizona Diamondbacks are. But that doesn't mean Arizona can't win this series. That doesn't mean it. And a lot of people are picking against the Arizona Diamondbacks. Nobody's giving them a chance. It seems like everybody's just already penciling in the Phillies as the series winner here. But I wouldn't be surprised if this goes the distance. Arizona's going to put up a fight in this series. If they can do what they did against the Dodgers in this series versus the Philadelphia Phillies, this series is going to be a fun one to watch. Anyways, that'll conclude this episode. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to listen to this. As always, I appreciate it. I hope you guys have a good one, and I will see you guys in the next episode. Thank you.